Hi class, it's Mrs. Perrone. We're on our last page of notes, page 51 in your shiny math book. We are going to be considering the problem on the previous page, which is about Pete's pool, which is leaking at a rate of negative 0.05 gallons per hour. We want to know how many hours it'll take to leak a total of negative 0.3 gallons. So we're going to be referring to this page as we answer some of the questions on page 51. So look at the picture it, which is this little bar model here on page 50. What do the three bars labeled negative 0.1 represent? What do the bars labeled negative 0.05 represent? So if we look at this diagram, they want to know what do these top bars represent? And so those top bars represent the total change in gallons of water in the pool. So the three bars labeled 0.1 are the total change in water in the pool. And that, by the way, was negative 0.3. So we had negative 0.1. So negative 0.1, negative 0.1, and negative 0.1 makes negative 0.3. So that addresses the first part of the question. Second part of the question says, what do the bars labeled as negative 0.05 represent? So if we look back at this little diagram, what do these little guys represent down here? You might want to go back and look at the words of the problem to match up this number with the words. So these little guys represent the change in the number of gallons every hour. So we'll say that the negative 0.05 bars represent the hourly, we'll call it the hourly leakage in the pool. So that first question just asks you to really study the diagram and make sure you understand what each of the numbers means. And that was the point of that. So why are the bars in picture it labeled with negative numbers? So let's go back and look at the bar diagram for picture it. Why do we have negative numbers here? So it all goes back to the keywords in the problem. In this case, the volume is changing, it's going down due to a leak. So when a pool leaks water, the quantity of water in the pool goes down. And in math, when a quantity goes down, we indicate that with a negative number. So we'll say the reason that the picture it, the diagram here in picture it, the reason why this has negative numbers is because negative numbers are used to represent a decrease in the amount of water in the pool. Basically, the amount of water in the pool is going down, and we have to represent that with a negative number. So we'll say a negative number is used to represent a decrease in the amount of water in the pool. We'll just say in the pool water. So we use a negative number because we're talking about the pool water, which is decreasing or going down. This word decrease means to go down. In math, when something decreases, it goes down. So that's a negative number. Okay, number 12. How do you decide how many times to add negative 0.05? So on the previous page, how many times, or how did we know how many times to add this? Well, we had a total that we were trying to reach, and so we would stop once we reached this goal, because the whole problem is we wanted to know how many hours it took to reach negative 0.3 gallons. So we had to repeatedly add that negative 0.05 until we reached that goal number. So we decided how many times to add negative 0.05 because we needed the sum to equal negative 0.3 gallons. The mystery word for this page is cranberry. So how many hours will it take for the volume of water in the pool to change by a total of negative 0.3 gallons? So we go back to the previous page. We figured this out with a little bit of division. It was 6 hours. It'll take 6 hours for the volume of the water in the pool to change by a total of negative 0.3 gallons. So explain how you can use the rules for dividing a negative number by a negative number to determine the sign of the quotient negative 0.3 divided by negative 0.05. So once again, I'm going to come back to my little tic-tac-toe friend. He helps me figure out the sign of the answer when you're multiplying or dividing positives or negatives. So I have a negative divided by a negative. I look at my little tic-tac-toe guy. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Works for decimals, works for integers, works for fractions, works for everything. I would probably write this on your paper if I were you, like when you're taking a quiz. It's very helpful. All right, so we're going to use what we just learned to solve these problems. We're going to show our work off to the side here or down below. Rebecca's bank statement shows a change of negative 150 in her account each week. How many weeks will it take before the total change is $12? So a change of negative 150 in her account means that she's spending $1.50 every week, so her account balance is going down. So how many weeks will it take before the total change is negative $12? I can figure that out by doing a little bit of division. So negative 12 divided by negative 150. And for this one, it's totally okay that you use your calculator. I encourage you to do so. Get used to it. Get used to using the decimals and the parentheses and the negative symbol. The more you practice, the better you'll be, and the greater resource that this will be for you. So let's see, negative 12 divided by negative 1.50. So we got 8. I want to make a note that you could do negative 12 divided by, you don't have to put the 150 in parentheses. It'll give you the same answer. You actually don't even need to put the 0. You could also do negative 12 divided by negative 1.5. You're going to get 8 any way you do it. There are lots of ways to plug it into the calculator. Just make sure you're being careful. But our final answer here is 8, or more specifically, 8 weeks. So it'll take her, if she's spending $1.50 every week, it's going to take her 8 weeks to spend a total of $12. And this last one, the elevation of a small submarine changes by negative 3/8 of a mile after each exploration. After how many explorations will the submarine's elevation have changed by negative 1.5 miles? Okay, so I want to figure this one out by using a table. So we're going to say, let's see. So it changes by this much after each exploration. So this top one, we're going to track the number of explorations. And then on the bottom here, we're going to track the elevation. So after one exploration, it changes by negative 3/8 of a mile. And we're going to count up the number of explorations until we reach this total that we're looking for of negative 1.5 miles. So let's use our calculator to help us. We need to figure out negative 3/8 plus another negative 3/8, and we're going to land, so if I were to do negative 3/8 and then add, we are adding another negative 3/8, and that's going to be our pattern here. We're going to keep adding a negative 3/8, negative 3/8, negative 3/8 until we get to negative 1.5. Okay, so negative 3/8 plus negative 3/8, if I convert that to a fraction, I get negative 3/4, so negative 3/4. I'm going to continue my pattern of adding a negative 3/8. And let's see, so after I add another negative 3/8, I'm at negative 1 1/8. Add another negative 3/8, so plus negative 3 divided by 8. And what do you know? I landed at negative 1.5, which is the same as negative 1 1/2. Negative 1 1/2. So it looks like it's going to take 4 explorations in order to reach that, the elevation of 1.5 miles below the surface of the water. So we're going to say 4 explorations. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in class.